Welcome to One Fact About Every National Park, Part 1. Let's go ahead and get started. Everglades National Park is home to the world's most dangerous tree. It's called the manchineel. The tree's sap is toxic, and it's present in every part of the tree. Touching the tree or eating its fruit will cause blistering, and in extreme cases, death. Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon is rumored to have been killed by an arrow from a native that was covered with the tree's sap. It's probably not surprising this tree would be found in Florida, of all states. But outside the U.S., it's also found in the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America, and northern South America. British explorer Captain James Cook once wrote about the trees. A party of men were sent to cut wood, as the island apparently afforded plenty of that article. Amongst other trees, they unluckily cut down several of the manchineel, the juice of which getting into their eyes rendered them blind for several days. 72 miles and 18,000 feet in elevation gain in less than 24 hours. It's called the Smokies Challenge Adventure Run, or SCAR for short. This challenge is on the Appalachian Trail from Fontana Dam to Davenport Gap. The first known person to complete the challenge was in 1988 by a woman named Vicki Johnson. At 45, she had already won the women's Masters division at the Western States 100, the Super Bowl of ultramarathons. And she was the first woman to complete the Old Dominion 100, a prestigious 100-mile race in Northern Virginia, in less than 24 hours. Johnson stated, "I was more beat at the end of this run than any other. Maybe it was the solitude, the mental fatigue from being alone all day. But I think I have a different sense of the mountains than I had, and they are even more magnificent than before." The fastest known completion was set last summer at 13 hours and 33 minutes. The fastest known double SCAR was set in 2022 as well, at 1 day, 23 hours, and 56 minutes. But before we go to the next national park, first, I want to share with you today's sponsor, Speakly. Speakly, in my opinion, may be the best language learning app created. I just started using it, but the methodology is clear. They teach words and sentences based on their relevance in real-life situations. This means that you don't learn anything that you actually can't use to speak the language. Everything is bare to the bones essential, and actually helps you start speaking the language much faster. Based on research, this methodology helps you learn languages 5 times faster compared to what most are accustomed to, which means you could go from 0 to solid speaking skills in around 3 to 4 months. This requires only 30 minutes of daily learning practice. One of my favorite things about the app is how it keeps track of your progress by showing you how many words you've learned. But again, this isn't just memorization by flashcards. You actually have to be able to use the word in real-life scenarios to get credit. If you've always wanted to speak a foreign language, 2023 is the time to make it happen, and no better way to do it than using Speakly. Try free for 7 days and get a 60% discount if you join the annual subscription. A 135-mile run in temperatures as high as 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It's called the Badwater 135, and it's known as the world's toughest foot race. The start line is at Badwater Basin, Death Valley National Park, which marks the lowest elevation in North America, at 280 feet below sea level. The race finishes at Whitney Portal, the trailhead to Mount Whitney Summit, the highest point in the contiguous United States. Competitors must finish in 48 hours. You can't just sign up for this event, you have to apply, and you need a pretty lengthy resume of other 100-mile races and knowledge on the history of the race. Some of the world's best ultramarathoners participate in this event, but 20 to 40% still fail to reach the finish. The record for this event is 21 hours, 33 minutes, and 1 second, set by Yoshihiko Ishikawa in 2022. The only prize for winning is a belt buckle, the same as every other finisher. In contrast to the hot desert in and around Las Vegas, Nevada actually has a glacier, located to the northeast in Great Basin National Park at the base of Wheeler Peak, Nevada's second tallest mountain. The Wheeler Peak Glacier is relatively small, covering about 2 acres in area. Its depth is unknown. The glacier is both an ice and rock glacier, since ice is only visible on the surface for a portion of the glacier, while the rest is covered with rock, with ice frozen in between the cracks. The glacier won't be there for much longer. It's been retreating since the end of the Little Ice Age, and it's expected to completely disappear within the next 20 years. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 miles above the Arctic Circle. That's the temperature that can be reached in Kobuk Valley National Park, Alaska, specifically the park's sand dunes. Standing in great contrast to the surrounding tundra and taiga, the Great Kobuk, Little Kobuk, and Hunt River sand dunes reach 100 feet high and together cover 30 square miles. The Great Kobuk sand dunes alone is the largest in the Arctic. These dunes were formed by retreating glaciers that began 14,000 years ago. At its peak, there was over 200,000 acres of dunes, but vegetation has been slowly creeping in. Today, there are less than 20,000 acres of dunes. President Theodore Roosevelt said this about the Grand Canyon. "Keep the Grand Canyon of Arizona as it is. We have gotten past the stage, my fellow citizens, when we are to be pardoned if we simply treat any part of our country as something to be skinned for 2 or 3 years for the use of the present generation. Whether it is the forest, the water, the scenery, whatever it is, handle it so that your children's children will get the benefit of it. Handle it that way." Grand Canyon, Arizona has a natural wonder which is in kind absolutely unparalleled throughout the rest of the world. I want to ask you to keep this great wonder of nature as it is now. I hope you will not have a building of any kind, not a summer cottage, a hotel, or anything else, to mar the wonderful grandeur, the sublimity, the great loneliness and beauty of the canyon. Leave it as it is. You cannot improve on it. The ages have been at work on it, and man can only mar it. Possibly the oldest human bones found in North America were discovered within Channel Islands National Park, specifically Santa Rosa Island. They were originally discovered in 1959, but in 1999, modern techniques of bone protein analysis and radiocarbon dating indicated that Arlington Springs Man lived some 13,000 years ago. A child burial in Montana is the only other find from the same period. The Channel Islands find supports the theory that the earliest people to enter the Americas migrated by boats instead of on foot, since boats would have obviously been needed to reach what was at the time one island. President Herbert Hoover lived part-time in Shenandoah National Park, Virginia during his presidency from 1929 to 1933. Hoover instructed his secretary to find a secluded retreat site within 100 miles of Washington, D.C., at least 2,500 feet above sea level to avoid mosquitoes and close to an excellent trout stream for fishing. A location was found, and the Brown House was built. The informal name was given in contrast to the president's more famous residence, the White House. Hoover essentially traded the presidential yacht for this retreat. He decommissioned what was called the Mayflower and had the mess crew along with the kitchen supplies transferred to the Brown House. Its official name was Rapidan Camp and was the precursor of the current presidential retreat, Camp David in Maryland. Today, the camp is open to the public. Yellowstone National Park is considered the first national park established, but Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas, was actually managed and protected by the federal government first. It was originally established by Congress as a federal reserve on April 20th, 1832, nearly 40 years before the establishment of Yellowstone National Park. Now, Hot Springs National Park wasn't really established to preserve its 47 hot springs pumping out 700,000 gallons of water a day in its natural state, but instead to conserve the production of uncontaminated hot water for public recreational use. It was thought the hot water could heal people of different diseases, and so bathhouses were built. The popularity of bathhouses have declined over the last 60 years, but you can still soak in the hot springs if you want. Crater Lake is the deepest lake in the United States at a depth of 1,949 feet. The lake was formed by the eruption of Mount Mazama 7,700 years ago, the largest known eruption of the Cascades volcanoes in a million years. Due to the eruption, magma emptied from the underlying magma chamber, resulting in a caldera. This is now Crater Lake. Later, smaller eruptions created volcanic features within the caldera, one of which is called Wizard Island, which sits at a height of around 755 feet on average above the lake. There are no rivers flowing into or out of Crater Lake, but the precipitation rate is higher than the evaporation rate, keeping it full. Feeding bears used to be allowed in Yellowstone. In fact, rangers themselves were feeding them hotel trash, and it was promoted to draw visitors. This, of course, caused problems. According to the Yellowstone Park Foundation, the years between 1931 and 1969, there was an estimated total of 48 bear-related injuries to visitors in the park, and over 100 cases of property damage resulting from bears trying to get food in cars or tearing down wooden fences on their way to get their next meal from a human. It took until 1970 for the park to stop the garbage feeding and ban visitors from feeding them as well. Parts of the gorge of the Black Canyon of the Gunnison in Colorado only receive 33 minutes of sunlight a day, which is where the name comes from. Author Dwayne Vandenbush sums up the canyon best. Several canyons of the American West are longer and some are deeper, but none combines the depth, sheerness, narrowness, darkness, and dread of the Black Canyon. Its greatest depth is 2,722 feet, more than double the height of the Eiffel Tower, and it's nearly double the height of the New River Gorge in West Virginia. The Gunnison River, which is the primary reason for the canyon, drops a good ways as well, at an average of 34 feet per mile. By comparison, the Colorado River drops an average of 7.5 feet per mile through the Grand Canyon. John Wilkes Booth murdered Abraham Lincoln, but he wasn't the only one arrested in connection to the murder. Over a dozen others were arrested, which included a physician named Samuel Mudd. The morning after Booth assassinated Lincoln, he went to Mudd's home for surgery on his leg, which he broke when fleeing the theater. Mudd reported seeing Booth, but apparently authorities felt he had delayed and believed he was in on the crime. He was found guilty of aiding and conspiracy in a murder and sentenced to life in prison. The prison he and 3 others connected with the murder were sent to was Fort Jefferson, now part of Dry Tortugas National Park. While there, Mudd stopped an outbreak of yellow fever after the prison doctor died. After 3 years in prison, Mudd was pardoned by President Andrew Johnson. National Park of American Samoa is the only United States national park south of the equator, and it's almost 5,000 miles away from the U.S. mainland. In 2022, it was the least visited park, with just 1,887 visits. This is because the park is so difficult to get to. It's in a remote location, so flights are more expensive, and you use up valuable vacation time just getting there. But a passport is also required to visit, even for U.S. citizens, despite the American Samoa being an American territory. Kings Canyon National Park was originally established in 1890 as General Grant National Park, just 1 week after its neighbor Sequoia National Park was established. General Grant National Park was expanded and renamed Kings Canyon National Park on March 4, 1940. General Grant National Park was created for the purpose of preserving the second tallest sequoia tree, which had been named for Ulysses S. Grant. The tree still stands and is thought to be around 1,650 years old. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, check out my other channel, National Park Explained. Thank you to my Patreon and YouTube members, and thank you all for watching.